How to stay sane. Welcome to How to Stay Sane with Karen Jordan. Today we're talking about a very important topic, sleep. And we have the ideal expert to speak on the subject, Dr. Fiona Barwick, who is the director of the Sleep and Circadian Health Program at Stanford Sleep Medicine Center in Redwood City, California. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Barwick.
I am very happy to be here. I always enjoy an opportunity to talk about my favorite subject, which is sleep.
Excellent, excellent. Well, tell us first of all, now everybody knows that, they've been told everyone should get 8 hours of sleep. Is that a myth or a mandate?
That is a myth, and you will get in trouble. Your sleep will get worse if you get fixated on trying to get 8 hours of sleep. It's really interesting. When we look at the research that's been done looking at hunter-gatherer tribes in Africa, they're living the lifestyle we presumably would have lived before the advent of modern technology and 24/7 activity. So they are up with the sun, awake and active during the day, apart from a rest period during the hottest part of the day. And then at night, no electricity, no electronics, just firelight, starlight, moonlight. The average amount of sleep adults get living this lifestyle is 6.5 hours of sleep.
Really?
Yes. In addition to which, people don't realize that sleep, the amount of sleep duration differs between individuals. It's partly genetic. It changes with age. There was a recent study. What the research has shown is there is a U-shaped relationship between sleep duration and health. And this has been shown in probably dozens of studies at this point, where they look at a big group of people at a single point in time, ask them how much sleep they're getting, and then look at something like all-cause mortality, their risk of dying from some cause or other. And what these studies consistently show is if you get, let's say, less than 6, some studies less than 5, or more than 8 hours, some studies say more than 9, your risk of all-cause mortality goes up.
Really? Goodness.
And there was a fascinating study done just this past month, or published just this past month, that looked at the link between sleep duration and biological aging. So what they did is they looked at what are called these biological clocks. We have clock genes in every cell, tissue, and organ system in our body, and these clocks can actually tell us the age of the system. And what they found when they looked at these biological aging clocks in relation to sleep duration is the optimal amount of sleep for men and women seemed to be 6.5 to roughly 7.5, 7.7 hours. That is the amount of sleep that was associated with optimal aging or healthier aging. If you were getting less than 6 or more than 8, that was associated with faster aging. So no, 8 hours is a myth. In addition to which, even apart from the fact that it's not accurate, if you try to focus on getting 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, especially once you hit adulthood, you will certainly fail, and you will become more anxious about sleep, more preoccupied with sleep, and you'll make your sleep worse.
That is interesting, and that's such fascinating research. And that makes me feel a lot better because I barely ever get 8 hours of sleep. But tell me one thing I'm curious about. Is it necessary to have a sleep routine that will make you sleep better at night? And if so, what should it consist of?
The best, what really increases the likelihood of getting good sleep on a given night is having a good day awake. So when you think about routines, you don't want to think about just a nighttime routine as if that's somehow going to magically make up for the things you weren't doing during the rest of the day. Because sleep actually starts with what you do in the morning. So what you want to have, you want to divide the day into 3 parts: your morning, your evening, and your daytime. Now in the morning, you want the best morning routine: light, movement, and food. Now when I say light, I mean outdoor light, actual exposure to outdoor light, not through a window, not just indoor lighting, because outdoor light is so much more powerful than indoor light or light through a window. Movement, because that increases body temperature, as does light. And what people don't realize, there's another myth out there where people think they should wake up refreshed, and if they didn't wake up refreshed, then they didn't sleep well. That's not necessarily true. When we wake up, melatonin is often still in our system. Melatonin is our main sleep-promoting hormone. And when melatonin is in our system, energy is low and mood is low. So if you wake up with melatonin in your system, you're going to be a little groggy. The longer you linger in bed and hit that snooze button, the longer that state continues. The faster you get up and get light movement and food, the faster you feel less groggy and more alert, in part because that light exposure, that increased body temperature help to suppress melatonin. So you've got the outdoor light, even 5 minutes will help. A little bit of movement, just moving around, making some coffee or breakfast or taking a short walk outside will work. And then food. Food also increases your body temperature in the morning, so gets rid of melatonin more quickly. And the other thing that these three components of a good morning routine do, sleep is what is called one of our circadian rhythms. These circadian rhythms regulate a lot of our behavior that fluctuates across the 24 hours. So things like when we feel sleepy and when we feel awake and when we feel hungry, they regulate changes in heart rate and blood pressure and body temperature and melatonin and cortisol, so a lot of different things. When you wake up in the morning and get up pretty promptly within 15 or so minutes of waking up and get that light movement and food, what you do is you set the timing for your sleep the coming night. You reinforce that strong circadian sleep-wake rhythm, which helps keep your sleep on track. So that's what you want to do in the morning.
I see.
Now, during the day, what you want to do is you want to be awake and active.
Okay.
Physically active, socially active, mentally active, because that is what builds this sleep pressure that helps you fall asleep more easily at night and get back to sleep more easily at night. The less you do, the less active you are, the worse for your sleep. So you want to be awake and active. That is what's going to help you get a better night of sleep the coming night. You want to make sure if you nap, you do not nap too long or too late.
Okay.
So the usual rule of thumb, keep your napping during the day to 30 minutes or less, and make sure it's at least 7 to 9 hours before your bedtime. If you nap for only 30 minutes, then you are less likely to go into deep sleep. And deep sleep is what will interfere with sleep the coming night.
Okay.
And if you make sure you're doing it 7 to 9 hours before your bedtime, you have plenty more time to build up that sleep pressure. So that's what you want to do during the day. Outdoor light, getting more outdoor light exposure, again, actually stepping outdoors. If you can integrate it in your daytime routine, take your phone calls outside, or if you need to check emails, maybe take your phone or laptop outside if you have a spot to do that. Outdoor light actually increases serotonin, which is the precursor to melatonin. And melatonin, like I said, our main sleep-promoting hormone. So the more serotonin you have, the more potential melatonin you have, which is going to be better for your sleep. So that's what you want to do during the day.
Okay.
Now, in the evening, it's very important to recognize when you're awake and active during the day, you're in what I would describe as a somewhat more stressed state. There's nothing wrong with that. An appropriate amount of stress allows us to be alert and productive and get stuff done. So that is what we want, as long as the stress is not too high and not too chronic. However, being in a stress state is incompatible with sleep. And so the evening routine is all about setting aside time, at least an hour, where you stop any productive activities, do not have stressful conversations. That should be the time that you start to decompress, unwind, come down from the day, and shift into this more relaxed state. So that evening routine, again, people find different things relaxing and enjoyable. You just want to make sure whatever you choose, whether it's reading a book or listening to a podcast or spending time with family or doing some gentle stretching, you want to make sure that it is something where you feel your mind calming and your body relaxing. The other thing about this is, I hate to say this because everyone is addicted to their screens, but being on your screens is not going to allow the things that need to happen to transition to sleep. It's going to prevent them from happening. What are those things? You need your melatonin, your sleep-promoting hormone, to go up, and then you need your cortisol, your stress hormone, to come down, and you need your body temperature to come down. And if you're on your screens, none of that happens. The screen light, the light from the screen, suppresses and delays your melatonin, which can delay your bedtime and give you poor quality sleep. And then the content of the screens keeps you more stimulated. And again, that more stimulated state is incompatible with sleep. So do yourself a favor, even if it's just 30 minutes, get off those screens. But ideally, Ideally, it should be an hour and a half or 2 hours, because that's when your melatonin starts going up to prepare you for sleep. But an hour is, if you can manage that, that would be very helpful.
Okay, that's really good advice. What about when you finally are able to get to sleep? What should you do if you wake up in the middle of the night and have trouble going back to sleep?
Keep in mind, the way that sleep unfolds is that sleep pressure is high because you've been awake and active all day, and you relax in this physical way. Watching TV is a distraction. That is not relaxation. So you want to be in this calm, relaxed state as you get ready for bed, as you get into bed. And if you wake up at night, you want to be in the same calm and relaxed state. Usually when people wake up at night, first of all, they start to get anxious or frustrated about being awake. Well, now you're just guaranteed you'll be awake longer. So that is not the right choice to make. The second option they choose, not consciously or intentionally, is to worry. Something to distract themselves from the many things we have to worry about. And the sleepy brain functions differently than the wakeful brain. Well, unfortunately, our sleepy brain, the executive functioning part of our brain, the reasoning, problem-solving, emotion-regulating part of our brain goes offline at night. And the part of the brain that gets amplified is the emotional brain. And for various reasons, our emotions tend to focus on the more negative things that could happen. So it's very easy for all of us, if we're awake at night, to get hijacked by this emotional brain and spend 2 hours worrying about something that happened 2 weeks ago, or maybe 2 years ago, or something that might happen 2 weeks from now, or maybe 2 years from now. And as long as you're doing that, you'll be awake. And so you first have to recognize people usually, if they're anxious or frustrated about being awake at night, one of the first things they worry about is they won't be able to get back to sleep, or they won't be able to function the next day.
Right.
If you actually step back and take a look at the fact, you've gotten back to sleep. Maybe not every night, maybe not as quickly as you wanted, but you've gotten back to sleep. And I would argue for 99% of people, the majority of the time you get back to sleep. There's far more evidence confirming you will get back to sleep than just confirming it. And I can also guarantee you, it depends on, of course, what else is going on. We'll talk about sleep disorders apart from insomnia. But if you have just insomnia, which are problems falling or staying asleep, the hallmark of insomnia is anxiety about sleep. And so if you have insomnia, I've seen probably thousands of people at this point. I've never met one, when it's just insomnia, who spent the entire next day in bed after a night of poor sleep. In part because we can't afford it.
True.
We have family and work and school responsibilities, but we also are biologically designed to be able to function on less sleep than we might optimally need. If we weren't able to do this, our species would have died out a long time ago. Every mammal is able to do this, is able to function on less sleep. So you're perfectly able to function. It may not be your best day, but unless you make it your worst day, it won't be your worst day either. So you want to, if you wake up at night, reassure yourself, okay, I'll get back to sleep eventually. I'll be fine tomorrow. I've done it before. I'm not going to worry about it now. You can reassure yourself that if you get poor sleep one night, it's usually better the next night. The sleep system is self-correcting. So just reassure yourself with all that, and then shift your attention away from the worry or whatever is trying to capture your sort of worried mind, your monkey mind. Shift away from that and focus on something that is more relaxing. Now, people use different things to distract themselves. I've heard people say they count backwards from 100 in threes or sevens, or they list all the states, or they, pick a letter and list all the words that start with that letter. Some people, from my perspective, it's actually better to use your breathing to relax. There are different ways you can use your breathing to relax, but probably some people may have heard of 4-4-4 breathing, where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Really what you're doing here, if you just slow your breathing down a bit and breathe out a little longer than you breathe in, try to breathe a little lower, a little slower, that will actually engage a physical relaxation response. So using this relaxation breathing at night, maybe while you're listening to some calming music or nature sounds, something like that, that's going to be a better choice to make if you have to be awake at night. I will say, though, depending on the level of stress you're under, sometimes focusing on your breathing is not enough to distract you because there's just too much to worry about. And if that's the case, if you're truly awake, don't lie in bed fighting to get back to sleep because you're just going to toss and turn and lay awake, or if you do fall back asleep, it's going to be poor quality sleep. Instead, just accept that for this moment, you're awake. The moment will pass, and just get out of bed and go be awake in an enjoyable way, a relaxing way. When you do that, three things happen. Number one, by standing up, walking to another room, and sitting up for 30 minutes, you actually build a bit more sleep drive. So when you do come back to bed, it's often easier to fall back asleep, and the sleep quality is better. Secondly, rather than lying in bed getting frustrated, you are distracting yourself and remaining more calm and relaxed. And finally, if you make sure when you are truly awake, especially if you're feeling anxious or frustrated, you make sure you're out of bed, and when you're in bed, you're only sleepy or sleeping. That association, if you do it over and over, starts to help you feel sleepy when you see that bed.
Oh.
So for all these reasons, I know it's a hard thing to do, to imagine getting out of bed when you're struggling to sleep, but in fact, by itself, that is an effective strategy for improving sleep.
Oh, that's very good to know. I'm interested in going back to something you mentioned, which was how sleep can self-correct itself the next night. Because, for example, I remember in college, when people would do overnighters, they would say, oh, you can't make up that sleep. So you're saying that there's a way to make up the sleep, or your body naturally will?
Yeah, no, there's no way to make up the sleep, certainly not all of it. What research seems to show is you might be able to make up some of it if you sleep a little longer within the next 2 to 3 days, but after that, it's gone. You can't make up for it. What I meant when I was saying the sleep system is self-correcting is if you get poor sleep one night, and maybe, insomnia is not the same thing as sleep loss. This is a common source of confusion. And let me explain it again. Insomnia, problems falling or staying asleep. But let's say you're someone who thinks you need 8 hours of sleep. And so you spend 9 hours in bed to get the 8 hours of sleep. But you actually only need 6.5. Well, you just guaranteed yourself to be awake for 2.5 hours.
Oh.
So you're not necessarily losing sleep. You just have the incorrect understanding of what your sleep need is. So insomnia, problems falling or staying asleep, is not the same thing as sleep loss. So it's not that you're losing sleep that night necessarily. Now, some people will. We can go over reasons for that. But you're not necessarily losing sleep the night before. If you are losing sleep, meaning your body gives you 6.5 hours of sleep, but you only allow yourself you only get 4.5 hours in bed because you have to be up for a family emergency or an early flight or something like that. Well, you lost some sleep. And then it makes sense to try to make up for it a bit the next day by taking maybe a slightly longer nap. If you lost 2 hours of sleep the night before, maybe you take an hour nap. You don't try to take the full 2 hours, maybe half of it. So half of the amount of sleep you lost, you take an extra nap, or maybe you go to bed a little earlier the next night, but your sleep will be better the next night if you've lost sleep. Okay. If you have insomnia, where you're in bed for longer than your body can fill with sleep, then your sleep is not necessarily going to self-correct.
I see. Okay. Thank you for explaining that. I was wondering.
Yeah.
So now tell me, something else that has been suggested to me when I'm having trouble sleeping is taking melatonin. Do you suggest sleep aids? Are they a good idea?
Sleep aids, so there are various issues with sleep aids. It's not that sleep medication is always inappropriate. There are absolutely situations like if someone has narcolepsy or restless legs. These are sleep disorders where medication is, narcolepsy is always used, restless legs it's often used. But if you have just insomnia, problems falling or staying asleep, medication is going to be counterproductive in a couple of ways. And I'll talk about melatonin in a moment, but let me just focus on prescription sleep aids.
Okay.
So, first of all, the treatment for insomnia, gold standard treatment worldwide, endorsed by every major medical and health organization in the world based on, at this point, 60 years of research, is called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And it's all about changing the unhelpful behaviors, like spending too much time in bed, and unhelpful thinking, like I need to get 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. So it's all about changing these things and helping people understand what they need to do to figure out their optimal sleep window and put in place routines to support it. So that is not about medication at all. Now, the issue with medication, there are various sleep disorders. Insomnia is the most common, but sleep apnea, these repeated interruptions in breathing, which are often accompanied by what's called a microarousal, either a shift to a lighter stage of sleep or a brief awakening, along with a drop in oxygen level. So this is different than insomnia. If you have sleep apnea, then you are losing sleep. You're actually not getting as much oxygen to your brain and heart, so it does have health risks for cardiovascular functioning. And your sleep quality is very poor. People will often wake up feeling really exhausted in the morning, because if you're fighting to breathe at night, sleep is not restful, it's stressful. The issue with folks who have undiagnosed sleep apnea, people will use, unknowingly, they'll use sleep medication that will mask the sleep apnea, and so they will never get it properly treated. People will also use sleep medication to mask the effects of alcohol on sleep. So alcohol always disrupts sleep because as it's metabolized, a couple of byproducts that appear in your bloodstream halfway through the night, one of them is cortisol, your stress hormone. So if you have a stress hormone circulating in your bloodstream halfway through the night, you're going to be awake or tossing and turning. There are a couple of other metabolites that are also pretty activating. So alcohol is not, like if you want one quick fix for your sleep, may not take care of everything, but it will improve it, and you're having like a beer, a glass of wine, a cocktail a night, just stop for 4 weeks and then bring it back. And that's when you'll notice the impact on your sleep. So people, when they use prescription sleep aids, often aren't identifying the actual source of the problem. If it's insomnia, the treatment should be this cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. If it's sleep apnea, the treatment should be what's called positive airway pressure, where basically you use air to kind of splint the airway open. There are other treatments as well for sleep apnea. If it's restless legs, that twitchy, sometimes painful, uncomfortable sensations in the legs that happens in the evening and makes you feel like you have to get up and move around or stretch. It's really uncomfortable if you're sitting or lying down. Now that makes it hard to fall asleep, can actually be occasionally disruptive for sleep at night, but people will lose sleep if they have restless legs. And this is a situation where people will need the right medication to address the restless legs. But if you're just using a sleep medication, that's actually not the right medication for restless legs. So I want people to be careful about their decision to use a sleep medication or ask for a sleep medication, also because sleep medications sedate you. Sedation is not sleep. So they change your natural sleep pattern. And sometimes they change it in unhelpful ways. Some of them give you less deep sleep, and some of them give you less dream sleep. And these are two very important stages of sleep for physical health, brain health. So you want to be careful about what you're using the sleep aid for. If you are having more chronic sleep disruption, you should definitely see a specialist. And you should try to get whatever is causing or contributing to the sleep disruption, you should really try to get that identified and treated appropriately. The final thing I would say about sleep aids is they're associated, like any medication, with side effects that occur in both the short term and the long term. So some of the short term side effects, almost all of them can be, because they're sedating, they can give you that hangover effect. You kind of feel groggy in the morning. I've definitely seen people who, when they got off their sleep aid, actually, they thought they needed more sleep because they felt so groggy in the morning, and when they got off the sleep aid, they felt clearer and better. So they have these short-term effects. This daytime, morning grogginess can often increase risk for falls and accidents. And then there are some medications, some sleep aids, that have been associated. Now, this is what's called a correlation. So it's a relationship that appears when you take this single snapshot and you look at, okay, who's been on sleep aids, who hasn't, how long have they been on them, how much are they using, and then decades later, how many of them were diagnosed with cognitive decline or dementia? Well, more than one of these sleep aids has been shown to be associated with cognitive decline or dementia. So these are some of the other reasons you want to be cautious about using sleep aids. Now with melatonin, the tricky part with melatonin, so the amount of melatonin our brain releases to help us feel sleepy is in the picograms, which means millionths of a milligram. So think about that. People are taking 3, 5, 10 milligrams. We're talking millions, 1, 2, 3 millionths of a milligram. That's all you need to help you feel sleepy. So when you dump a Pacific Ocean of melatonin into your brain at bedtime, it's doing virtually nothing. Except calming your anxiety about sleep. And if you're anxious about sleep and you calm your anxiety down, sleep may unfold more easily. So it's probably what's called a placebo effect. The challenge with melatonin, apart from that, is unlike most countries in the world, the U.S. does not regulate melatonin. So it's not a prescription medication. And it is 100% guaranteed that whatever melatonin product you take off the pharmacy shelf, what is on the label will not be in the pill. They've done studies on this. So you don't actually know what you're getting. So that's a big problem with melatonin. Yes. Now, having said that, there are some situations where melatonin is appropriate. So for folks on the autism spectrum, they seem to have abnormalities in melatonin synthesis. So 3 milligrams of melatonin, 30 minutes before bedtime, as long as it's sort of quality certified. If you look for the USP or NSF seal of approval, that is a sign that the company has paid money to have a third party come and randomly take their products off the shelf and test them to make sure what's on the label is in the pill. So if you get quality certified melatonin and you have autism spectrum, then taking that 30 minutes before bedtime, many studies have shown that can be helpful. If you're someone who is a naturally late sleeper, what we call a night owl, now the timing of sleep, like many aspects of sleep, duration of sleep, timing of sleep, ability to nap, there's a partial genetic component to this. So there are morning types and evening types. Evening types typically don't feel sleepy until after midnight, but they don't always have the luxury in our morning culture of going to sleep and waking up when they're ready to go to sleep and wake up, and often they have to go to sleep and try to go to sleep and then wake up earlier. And so for night owls, natural night owls, half the people who think they're evening types are not, they're just on their screens, and that's pushing their bedtime later. But for the natural night owls, the genetic night owls, who need to move their sleep schedule earlier, then taking a very tiny dose of melatonin, 0.5 milligrams, 5 hours before bedtime is what the protocol would be. So melatonin, from my perspective, I wouldn't waste my time or money taking it at bedtime. I would actually see a sleep specialist and see if there's something else that's going on.
Well, thank you for explaining that. I'm definitely going to avoid melatonin now.
Yeah, I mean, don't let it, unfortunately, with sleep there's no quick hack, which is what everyone's looking for. Melatonin is not that hack. It's just putting in place, like figuring out the right sleep window for your body clock, both in terms of where it's placed, how long it is, then putting in place good morning and evening routines, making sure you're awake and active during the day, transitioning to bedtime by being, doing calm, relaxing activities, managing any wakefulness at night in appropriate ways. The other thing people don't realize, another myth, people think they should not wake up at all during the night. On average, adults wake up 10 to 12 times a night.
Wow.
So that's always a big surprise to people. And if you think about it, if you're awake for less than 3 minutes, you won't remember it, which is why any adult who tells you they slept through the night didn't. They just don't remember the awakenings. If you think about it, this pattern makes some sense because sleep is dangerous, right? It's risky to be unaware of our environment for hours at a time. And we probably, as a consequence, evolved this pattern where we would, during the night, wake up briefly, scan our environment, make sure we're safe. If we were safe, we'd fall back asleep quickly, not even remember it. But if we weren't safe, we could get up and do what we needed to defend ourselves from whatever threat was presenting itself. So, waking up at night is normal. What wakes us up is not usually what keeps us up. So if you do have to be awake at night, like I was saying before, don't get anxious or frustrated. Remind yourself of the truth, the accurate information, which is you'll get back to sleep eventually. If you don't get a great night of sleep that night, it'll be better the next night. You'll be able to function the next day. And then shift to something more calm and relaxing to distract you.
That is encouraging. That's very encouraging. What about people who eat dinner late? Is it a good or a bad idea to eat before you go to sleep?
I would say for the most part a bad idea. I would definitely not recommend that for people. It can be a little complicated when people are dealing with hypoglycemia or prediabetes or diabetes, but I won't get into that, not my area of expertise. But what I would say is from a sleep perspective, so I talked about and mentioned circadian rhythms before. Our major circadian rhythms are wake, sleep, feeding, fasting, activity, inactivity, and light, dark. We feel best and function best when we create very clear distinctions between night and day. So when you are awake, you are active, eating in the light. When you are trying to sleep, you are quiet, not eating in the dark. The reason eating close to bedtime is such a bad idea, in part, is because it increases your body temperature, and higher body temperature is an alerting cue. It's what you want to do in the morning. You want to eat in the morning, move around in the morning, get your body temperature up in the morning because you feel more alert. You don't want to be doing that close to bedtime. You want to be relatively quiet, not engaging in vigorous exercise. You want to finish your final meal 4 hours before bedtime. I'll talk about why that is. Because you need your body temperature to cool. The two biggest cues for sleep in our evolutionary environment were light to dark and warm to cool. And interestingly, when you look at those hunter-gatherer tribes, the tribe members are not going to sleep when the sun goes down. They're going to bed when the temperature goes down.
Oh.
So it is the cooling that is the most important part. So if you're having something to eat and increasing your body temperature, that is not going to help you fall asleep. In addition to which, there was a recent study done at Stanford that was really interesting. What they found, so like I said, we have these clock genes in every organ system in our body. We have these circadian rhythms in every organ system in our body. And so this research group looked at these, what they call the gut rhythms, circadian rhythms in the gut. And what they found is that the more closely these gut rhythms matched up with the sleep rhythms at night, especially deep sleep, when we fall into deep sleep, our brain activity slows down. So the more closely these gut rhythms match the sleep rhythms and slow down, the more restful the sleep. Well, if your gut is in the process of digesting, those rhythms are not slowing down. So
True.
That is not going to create more restful sleep. Now, the final thing is melatonin. Remember, melatonin, your main sleep-promoting hormone, goes up about an hour and a half, 2 hours before bedtime, out of your system within about 30 to 60 minutes in the morning, sometimes a little later for some people. Melatonin slows your metabolism. So you do not want to be eating when melatonin is in your system because it is going to take longer to digest. So that means having something to eat about an hour after waking up. You do want to have something to eat, even if it's small, in that hour, after that hour, because our brain tends to be woken up by light. Light is our most powerful alerting cues, but those clock genes in organs like the liver and the stomach are not as sensitive to light. They're more sensitive to food. So if you wake up to the light at one time and don't eat until several hours later, you are in a state of circadian misalignment, which is not going to be so helpful. So making sure you have something to eat within an hour of waking up to signal all your body clocks, everyone's awake, ready to start the day. That's what you want to do in the morning. In the evening, however, melatonin, like I said, goes up roughly a couple of hours before bedtime. You'll need a couple of hours to digest, get the food out of your stomach, get those gut rhythms starting to slow down. So you got 2 hours to digest before melatonin hits your system, 2 hours before bedtime. So that's 4 hours that you should try to finish your final meal. I will say sometimes, people can get hungry and be woken up if blood sugar drops during the night. So if you find yourself being woken up because you're hungry during the night, then having a small snack a little closer to bedtime can be helpful. But if you're going to have a small snack, make sure it's high protein, complex carbs, so you don't unnecessarily spike your blood sugar, which is going to increase your body temperature.
Oh, that's great information to have. Excellent. Yeah. Is there anything else that people should know that we haven't talked about that you think people should be aware of when it comes to getting a good night's sleep?
One more thing. I always tell people sleep is not a performance unless you're awake. A lot of times people treat sleep like a performance. They aim for a certain amount of sleep. If it were that easy, all I would need to do is tell my patients, hey, just spend 9 hours in bed and sleep. That's not how it works, right? You can't do that. That's why you're struggling. You want to get the amount of sleep you think you should be getting, and you're not.
Right.
So you can't treat sleep like a performance. It's only a performance when you're awake, because it's what you do when you're awake that increases or decreases, depending on what you're doing, increases or decreases the likelihood of getting sleep on a given night. And that's why I spend time talking about the importance of the morning routine, and that to get you awake and active, and then remaining awake and active during the day, and then transition to sleep by relaxing, unwinding. It's what you do during the day or during your wakeful hours. That is what is going to get you better sleep. And also seeing a sleep specialist if you are having chronic sleep problems, especially if you are feeling sleepy during the day, despite allowing yourself sufficient time in bed to get the sleep you want to try to get, there is something going on that you need to have addressed. Okay, so that's when you should really see a specialist.
Okay, that's excellent. Such great information. Thank you so much, Dr. Fiona Barwick. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, you are more than welcome. I was very happy to get the invitation to talk to you, Karen, so thank you.
Dr. Fiona Barwick shared some fascinating information with us. I learned so much today. I hope you did. Thanks so much for listening. Join me next time on How to Stay Sane with Karen Jordan. How to stay